Okay, we're back. Okay.
Okay.
Take it away.
Here we go. Okay, so we grouped the issues you gave us to work through into three categories.
Okay.
This commercial ag issue, the groundwater issue with respect to the reserve tier, and the other remaining issues. And so we want to start with this commercial ag issue. What you see up on the screen is some additional language that we've developed to address this issue about if the commercial ag water is removed from the total production, what are the steps? What are the additional steps that need to be taken to make sure that all of that water is what people say it is, and what steps that those customers then can take to contribute to drought response, contribute to conservation. So what you see in subsection E1A is some additional language. Impose reductions determined locally appropriate by the urban water supplier after considering the applicable urban water supplier conservation standards specified in subdivision C. So the idea here would be we are, again, we are not dictating, or you would not be dictating what specific reductions would be required for the commercial agriculture users, simply that for all of the urban water suppliers that have commercial agriculture as part of their water supply portfolio, that they would be imposing reductions that are locally appropriate and in line with whatever their conservation standard is for the rest of their customers. But again, no specified percent reduction. So let me pause there.
All right, and is this fine-tuning this particular alternative, or are you assuming or adopting this alternative versus 10 or 20?
We are fine-tuning this one for your consideration. So, 10 or 20 have already been, 20 is the current staff proposal, 10 is a variation on that, with the only change being a change from 20 to 10 in the current language, and this is an alternate option that we have refined. So we've sort of, I would say really you have two and a half options in front of you, with the 10% being a half change from the 20. But so this is one, and the current language on 20 is there currently.
And one thing to add, this does in many respects track the language that was previously proposed that has the 20% threshold in it. This doesn't have a 20% threshold. So if the board chose, thresholds could be put in place in this language if there were aspects of this language that you liked better than the prior proposal that didn't have this degree of specificity. Sorry to give you more choices, but
Yeah, no,
they're all
that's
very similar
helpful.
and hovering around some small differences.
More accountable than the current proposal.
Correct.
If we could scroll down, also just a couple of other wording changes that Mr. Rose explained earlier vis-a-vis the board's authority.
Right.
But so that's the rest of this is as proposed earlier. And I think as Mr. Rose explained, the main difference between this and the current 20%, this has more specific requirements included and as of right now doesn't have a percent threshold, would apply to all commercial ag water.
Okay. What's your pleasure? Do you want to talk about this now, or do you want to go through everything? Let's go ahead. Okay. Got it.
Okay, so we had two other categories. We're putting this aside for now, is that?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
So the second is the groundwater issue, which is really a tough one. I want to acknowledge that at the outset. There's been a lot of very thoughtful comment and suggestions on this, and we spent a lot of time, not just today, but in the past weeks, really trying to figure out, is there a way to carve out something that would address the concerns that have been raised by some about really having a healthy groundwater supply. And we have simply concluded that it's beyond, it's certainly beyond our capability to do it. We don't think that there's a way to address groundwater as part of this application for the 4% reserve tier. There is too little known about groundwater overall. We simply don't have the data we need. The groundwater law was passed just last year. We're just getting started on that. We don't have a sense that there's a way for suppliers to provide us with the kind of data that would allow us to, fairly and effectively ascertain whether their particular groundwater basin and their particular draw from their groundwater basin is sustainable. It's above the threshold for implementability, is how I would put it. It's just above doable in terms of this regulation. So I absolutely want to address it as part of work group going forward. But again, we acknowledge that this is a tough one. But for the purposes of this emergency regulation, don't see a path forward where we could carve out something that would work. So can we have the resolution? If we could scroll down to page 4. So the first change you can see in number 5 there, just to acknowledge the comments that were raised by the Building Industry Association, that there is growing demand as the state's economy is rebounding. And so we just wanted to acknowledge that with language there. So if we can continue scrolling down.
Do you want to delete the extra space at the end of that?
We do.
There.
Yeah, that's on me. I was the typist. Onto page 5, we added H there, subunit H. These are things that we are calling on water suppliers to do, and so we wanted to be responsive to the discussion that you all had earlier about the need for greater implementation of on-site reuse. So that language is there to again add your voices to the call to develop on-site reuse as a water efficiency measure. So continuing to scroll.
There's another
Yes, go back.
typist issue.
You want to, are you catching? Okay.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
and the
and,
period and
yeah.
the, okay.
Yeah. I apologize for the typos.
Tough crowd.
So number 16, this goes to the issue that was discussed about when can we have information from water suppliers that may have a really high CII usage that if it's food processing or other CII usage that really is firm, there's not a lot of wiggle room there, and how are we going to handle that? So what we've done is simply deleted the part that said as part of enforcement efforts. So now it just reads, the board directs staff to work with the water suppliers to determine alternate methods of compliance if this is really the case. And so I think, as I stated earlier, we and as Board Member Diadamo, noted, this is something we want to start on, right now. And I think what we would propose to do is not change the resolution language anymore, but starting immediately post-adoption, get in touch with the water suppliers, see who's going to be, requesting this, and begin to work with them, begin looking at the data and seeing what's possible. So we're starting it immediately so that we can really know what is possible in terms of their existing conservation standard, and where we might need to go to something different.
Max, can we just mention here, just on the record, that while it doesn't say it explicitly, that if if an approach on an alternate compliance method is reached, it will be memorialized through one of our enforcement tools.
That's what we had talked about before the break, about when the public process comes in and what the process would be. So we are still talking about the implementability being through enforceable board orders that go through an existing process. But this change was intended to reflect what we had heard from you about when and how we work with them, and potentially to take out the language that might be vexing to some, that enforcement was going to be the method that we'd be addressing alternate methods of compliance.
We don't want to vex anyone.
No. So it would be the outcome, but
Too late, I know, too late, yeah.
No vexing, no hexing, and yeah.
But are you, I do like the idea of economy of words, but I'm not sure it captures the sort of promptness either. I mean, you say you'll do it right away. I trust that you will do it right away, but also encouraging them to come to us quickly. I mean, it shouldn't all be on you to solicit. So I wouldn't mind some encouraging words about promptly.
Are you referring to us getting the requests coming to us promptly, or our prompt response to those requests?
Both. Your prompt request, their prompt response, your prompt response. So any combo of the two, but there's nothing in here that indicates that they should be letting you know right away.
Self-help.
Well,
I think just self-help, if you think that's enough, I'll be okay.
No, I'm saying,
But I think
agree that
we should encourage
they've
people to
raised-
get to us
they've raised
soon.
the
I just don't
issue,
want
so-
people to sandbag us later either.
I would be happy to add the word expeditiously in after to expeditiously work with water suppliers. I mean, if you...
I know, that's right. Don't split your infinitives,
All
yeah.
right.
It's drunken white moment, yeah.
Just a suggestion that, I think those kind of words are all well and good, but I think isn't what we're trying to get to here is that assuming that there is an action, that the OAL approves the regs, that shortly after approval, that we will provide some provide some sort of communication to water suppliers about this avenue, describing what it's tailored to, how to get information to us, and how we will react to it.
Yeah, I think the phrasing is awkward, unachievable due to firm commercial and industrial water use and residential use reduction that would affect public health and safety.
What if we were to add something that gets more to the process part of it, that, upon the effective date, or just something along those lines, that staff are directed to provide information to water suppliers on how, the timing or approach to provide information under this section?
We can't, let's see, what happens after the and? Let me go to the, oh,
So-
that just goes to 17.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go to 17, I guess.
No,
we
go
can-
back to
Okay.
16. I still don't think it's still kind of vague in the sense that it's not letting people know that we're trying to avoid out-of-scale impacts
Are you interested
because
in,
of unique circumstances, but also that,
Well, I
I
think
wouldn't
we,
mind you saying it would be more, I mean, we know what you're talking about right now. The people sitting here may, now the people listening on the web may know what we're talking about right now, but someone just reading this won't know what we're talking about. That's my concern.
are you interested in more in board staff outreach or responsiveness to requests?
I'm more into being clear on what this is about, so that it's about, yeah, promptly, I'm mostly interested in those agencies taking responsibility for this being a problem, coming to us quickly, as opposed to putting it all on you all. I want an expectation that if you're going to need this sort of a issue, and I don't mind that it's memorialized in enforcement. I think you should add that in. It's going to be memorialized in enforcement tool. You just didn't want to be saying as part of enforcement efforts. That made it sound like it's going to be this gotcha at the end, as opposed to the point being that we recognize there may be an issue. We want to know about it. We want to memorialize it. We're not going to let you get off, scot-free. You're going to have to do something, but we want to work it through early because everybody's going to have to act on this early.
so I'm just looking at this some more. I don't know if this would make a difference, but we've got the word to determine alternate methods of compliance. We could change determine to adopt. But if you want to add something that speaks directly to the water suppliers, that would be separate, because this is a direction to staff.
So we would say, well, I guess we could say direct staff to promptly notify water
Engage, right.
suppliers of the opportunity or the need to discuss this early, something in that. I'm not coming up with
Would
words,
you-
but that's the,
Would you consider, Madam Chair, I think under Resolve 10, Resolve 10 contains the directions to the water suppliers. So do you want to add something there about them notifying staff as soon as possible of any, whatever the language is in 16? It sounds to me like you want to put an order on the water suppliers to take action as soon as possible and let staff know.
Right.
And then 16 is focused on staff responding to that in an efficient manner.
Something like that
So it
works,
sounds
sure.
like I think the cleanest way to do it is to add something to section
Good.
10 there that makes it a direction to the water supplier to get that information to staff as soon as possible, and not just wait until you're in deep trouble. And then 16 could circle back to that.
that works for me.
Okay, so I think that language is being developed over there. While we're doing that, can we go to 17 really quick? So again, we've just added in language to address health and safety, which has been raised by a number of commenters today as an issue vis-a-vis hospitals, vis-a-vis other facilities that a water supplier may have in its service area. So again, this is the language that speaks to some of the issues the work group would address. And Chair Marcus, you had a number of issues, for basically that need to be addressed by a work group. We didn't want to try and list all of them
Right.
in this paragraph, but I think it's, implicit that this speaks to the types of issues that a work group or work groups will be sort of discussing going forward.
And then how can, well, it's not like we need to put everything in a resolution. I would want your, and I'm open to suggestion, I would want your listing of that and how you would propose to set up those work groups in a fairly short period of time. Not that you have to have all of the meeting all the time, but a strategy for rolling through the issues that cover all the things we talked about. I'd want to see, and I know my colleagues would want to give you input on the issues, the kind of players to make sure are included in those discussions.
I think we could turn that around pretty quickly. And one thing I'd mention is that, we're still doing our monthly reporting. So our next report to the board will be the first meeting in June, so we could then report publicly on, what progress we've made.
And stakeholders instead of water suppliers?
Oh, that is right. I'm sorry. We had meant to put that in and we didn't. We just make that
Change that?
change.
Or water suppliers and stakeholders, but the water
Not
supplier is a
thoughtful
stakeholder.
process. Thank you.
You got it, yeah. Change water suppliers to stakeholders.
Well, I don't know that stakeholders have asked for further refinement, maybe. I don't know, some of the cities, maybe,
So,
quite as important.
and after we do that, if we could scroll back up to number 5 on page 3, I believe. Board Member Moore, I just want to point out, as part of number 5, that there's already a direction to staff to provide the board with monthly updates on the implementation of the regulation. And I think as part of that, we will ensure that the other agencies that are working on implementing different parts of the executive order can come and provide the board with updates.
Yeah, you all do that. It's like our drought updates or the fact that you've had DWR here with you on occasion too.
Right.
I don't know that we need to say that.
So I see Mr.
You
Rose.
sure you don't want to add these updates shall include but are not limited to?
We're going for economy. So I think Mr. Rose has returned, so maybe we can scroll back down to 16. Oh, to 10. I'm sorry, that's right, to 10.
Let's start with 10.
Yep.
What we have, as a proposal, is something that has parts in both 10 and 16. So let's start with 10. So this would be a new 10 subsection I following H. Yeah. So seeing as how 10 starts with the State Water Board calls upon suppliers to, I would start with promptly notify staff of the supplier's need for an alternate method of compliance pursuant to need for an alternate method of compliance. Alternate method of compliance pursuant to, pursuant to whereas paragraph 16. Period. Oh, is it resolved? I'm sorry, resolved paragraph 16. Let's replace it. Thank you. alternate method of compliance pursuant to resolve period. Then we would move down to 16 and hopefully clarify what you would like clarified here. So the board directs staff, then we would delete we've already deleted the part in the commas. Add back in a space before 2, please. So after 2, to promptly respond to promptly respond to any requests, and then we would delete work with water suppliers to determine. Add in the word for, so it's for alternate method, after alternate add in alternate enforceable methods of compliance. I would put a period after the word compliance. Start a new sentence, so it'd be a little less of an unwieldy sentence. Just capitalize the I in if. If the supplier believes, so after if the supplier believes the conservation standard, so conservation standard is unachievable, and we'd go down to after safety before the semicolon, all the way at the bottom, comma, it should provide any supporting information or documentation for an alternate method of compliance. That can be wordsmithed, but that, I believe, addresses in both 10 with direction to suppliers and in 16 with direction to staff to be responsive through the processes that we have to requests to address this situation that's already identified in paragraph 16.
I would emphasize promptly.
We heard that you really wanted prompt response.
promptly in both versions.
All right, but does Fran care about splitting the infinitive? You should.
Respond, to respond.
To respond promptly.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, to respond promptly. It's strike and white. Yeah. All right, so it'll be fine when it's, all right. Okay. Question? Unless, keep going if you.
So that covers, we hope that was responsive. So if you have additional questions, we can
We need to
entertain
go
them.
back to the section 865 subdivision.
Does that respond? Do we have any edits while this is up, or do you want to go back to 865A first?
Oh,
How,
okay with all
okay,
of it.
so the 2 twos don't bother you, because I was going to propose a fix to the 2 twos.
Wait, so where are we now?
Where'd it go? Oh, that could just easily be changed to, the board directs staff to respond promptly upon receiving requests for alternate enforceable methods of compliance.
Oh, I see.
So I get rid of the second two that was irking
Okay,
you.
upon receiving, sure, that's fine. So it'd be up at the top after,
Upon receipt of any request, yeah. Of request, yeah.
yeah, good, but take the S out up there of request.
Yeah.
So we hope that covers the resolution. Yes? I'm seeing heads nod. Okay, good. So let's go back to the other document, 865.
Can I ask you a question, though, and maybe this is there or not? One of the gentleman from West Sacramento was talking about population growth. Short-term population growth can be handled, as we're thinking short-term, because new population is in more water efficient. Oh, sorry. How can I talk with my hands if I'm holding the mic? More, cost-effective. So I didn't want to ignore that, but it just strikes me that that's something where you have more efficient things coming in, and if it's in their commercial industrial and is really outsized, they can use 16, right?
That's right.
That was just on my list. I'm not sure we talked about. I didn't want to minimize that as an issue in the long run, but again, part of the whole point has been, in much of what people have said, that major cities all over the state have grown by millions of people without growing their water use. So obviously, efficiency can handle that in virtually all cases.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a number
In
of
the short
people,
run, at least.
Right, in the short run, write to us and say, we've grown by 5% in the last 2 years, and the idea being that, as you mentioned, the new development is efficient. So a 5% growth in population shouldn't translate to more than maybe a 1 or 2% growth in water demand. So it shouldn't be for a 270-day period.
Right,
a
and if
huge
one
issue.
is planning to grow or in growth, one should be doubling down on conservation and efficiency, because again, the whole reason we're here, the ball our eye is on, is the fact that we're in a massive drought unlike anything we've experienced, and we need to prepare in advance in the future to be able to accommodate it. So it's not an excuse. It's, if anything, more of an imperative to do even more conservation.
That's right, and for the work group, for a longer term, approach, population growth is right in there with all of these other issues.
Where are we going now?
So I think, so let me just refresh on this. That there's a staff proposal which we presented on, which has a 20% threshold, and there is this language, which is an alternate way to address commercial agriculture, and I think we wanted this to be responsive to what we heard in terms of direction to us for modifications of this language, but I think we need direction from you as to where you're going.
I prefer this language.
It's better.
Yeah, I also support this in lieu of the 20% cutoff.
Since I can count vote, let me just say that.
I'm open. I could see it both ways. Because
but
the
you're-
20% was geared towards dealing with an anomaly, so I'm interested in what you have to say.
No,
I'm not counting. I'm trying to understand what we should do.
I think my only pause is, and I stated earlier that it's those reductions that was the factor for me in even considering this alternative language. And I appreciate the additional language that staff has proposed, but I don't know that this actually would result in any reductions.
Well, I'm going to just,
Reductions,
20% didn't
I'm going to just jump in here. The 20% was by comparison, quite a bit of water, and it didn't require anything. This is going to make those districts and the water suppliers more accountable. Yeah. And so I think in light of the fact that we're looking at it's difficult to say a certain amount because each area is going to be so different. San Diego's indicated where they,
15%?
yeah, because of the cut from Met. And so, you know, they've had the time to think this through. It's hard to say what other districts are going to do, but we're going to be getting more with this than we did with the 20%. And I just like it because I had a hard time with, you know, at what point do you pass the threshold? The biggest concern was the issue of gaming the system and fraud. And so now we have that additional requirement. So I think that it creates a program that's that can be more easily justified and make the participants accountable.
All right, well, I will put my reservations aside and go along with the majority of my colleagues, but I will have staff note and flag this item as one that I would ask you to carefully track and report back to us. in
I would
terms of
agree with that.
implementation.
We're going to need, this is trust but verify, I think.
Yes.
And we will track this item, and I think, you know, this whole discussion raises some issues that are going to require more thinking through. You know, we have this definition of what's an urban water supplier. We have some urban water suppliers that supply more than 2/3 of their total water for commercial agriculture. We have to think through, you know, how does this work in the long run, because it's important.
No, I do think we do, because there are certain differences between urban agriculture and non-urban agriculture in terms of the rules they live by, because in this area, the water is coming from that same Diamond Valley Reservoir and other sources but you don't want to, again, we're trying to balance anomalous results, and we don't want we don't want to impose undue hardships on commercial agriculture. By the same token, there's commercial agriculture in other parts of the state that are being hammered because of their more junior water rights or their circumstance. So again, I want to make sure we're not doing a categorical exemption. We're doing what seems to be reasonable in the context that we're dealing with it. And the fact that it seems to be a localized anomaly makes me feel a little more comfortable with it. And the fact that you have additional restrictions that don't make this a walk in the park by any means.
And I'll also note that we're going to be collecting data now
Right.
through this, which should help moving forward with, you know, figuring out what will work for longer term.
I'll just say that I think we all received this packet from San Diego County Farm Bureau, but in their area, because of the high cost of water, and I agree with what you're saying, it's coming from, you know, it's an urban supply. So it's very costly, and so as a result, we've seen, it looks like, well, it's not quite a 50% reduction over a 10-year period.
It's
So
a
the
50% actual reduction in quantity, not just in gain in efficiency like it is in some other parts of the
Well,
state.
that's what I see here, acre
Okay.
feet. But as Mr. Gomberg is saying, you're going to be collecting information, so this will give us an opportunity to glean that additional information that we don't have with respect to other water districts.
Yeah, it appears to mirror some of the direction in the governor's executive order too, in terms of the water management plan development where it isn't in place maybe today. So and it brings these commercial agricultural operations within urban water supplier jurisdiction into that discussion. And I think it's helpful.
So is now the time to move adoption of the regulation as, a resolution, I'm sorry.
Resolution.
The resolution as amended through the change sheet and through these, what do we call this?
Yeah, so the way that I would frame the motion is move to adopt the staff proposal, the resolution specifically, as well as the change sheet, the changes that have been reflected in red line strikeout both to the resolution as well as to the attachment to the resolution, which is simply a matter of substituting in section 865, subdivision E in the original staff proposal with subdivision E that's been displayed on the screen. And then I would ask that the motion include an additional authority, because you'll notice as we were going through, there was some renumbering that was occurring in 10, so some cleanup issues. So authorizing the clerk to make conforming changes to the adoption resolution to ensure that numbering, lettering, and spacing is correct, that typical type of clerical things we do.
Except for the last little piece about typical things we do. That's my resolution.
And that's my second.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Is there anything anyone wants to say before I call for a vote?
Just a huge, huge thank you to staff. You don't have to start right away, Max. You can get a night's sleep.
I heard I get a week or something.
All right. Yeah. I wanted to say a couple things. One is, obviously, we've said a lot through the course of the day, and I do think we have to think about this in the context of the drought overall and the context of what we know is not only has happened in the past, but is possible given the Australian experience and the importance of acting now, as painful as it may be. And I don't want to minimize how much effort, all of the things people have said here in the comments, in the myriad meetings we've all been a part of. This is not an easy thing to do. We know we're not asking people to do things that are easy. We're taking a step because of what we're facing and trying to take not even the long-term view, but the somewhat long view, and a view that it is better to prepare now than to face much more painful cuts should it not rain in the fall. But let's hope that it rains and snows heavily in the fall, but not so heavily that it floods or anything happens. But again, I do get all the fears and the concerns, but I do think this is a moment to rise to an occasion and an all-hands-on-deck kind of a moment. And so I want to thank the staff for their effort, but also people in this audience and other people who have spent an awful lot of time trying to bring issues to our attention and coming up with solutions. And we've had some very good suggestions come, I won't say exactly equally, but they have come as much from those who have critiqued us as those who have thanked us. Way of introducing their suggestions sometimes, but I appreciate the good suggestions nonetheless, and the spirit with which staff all across the board and my colleagues have jumped up to do meetings. Again, not perfect, but I think a very important thing to do that we will be glad we did if it doesn't rain or snow the next couple of years.
And I'd like to thank you for your leadership. You've been on every airwave, every newspaper, and so your leadership has really helped to set the tone. Staff, you were expecting people to step up. I mean, we all are, but you're out there every day, and I think that the testimony that we got today reflects that. People did step up. We didn't hear anyone say, we're not going to do this, we don't want to. So thank you.
Well, with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I hear no opposition, so it carries, and we are recessed until tomorrow morning.